Okay, so back at the table, but not doing a build today. Actually wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I have the AMT Coca-Cola monster truck here because at the end of that build video, I did mention very briefly the issue about doing decals across body seams and door seams and things like that. But I didn't get into detail on it because that video was long enough as it was. So I figured I would just do a separate little how-to. Now, what I'm going to show you here is not rocket science. It's very simple. That said, there are probably other ways to go about handling this issue, but I'm just going to show you one possible way. It's the way I handle it, and you know I like simple, practical things, and I have found this to be that sort of a solution. So, what is the problem? The problem is when you have a kit, and I'm using this one as an example. So this Coca-Cola decal was one large decal, no seams, all in one piece. Yet, it has to lay over the side of the body. There's a big gap here between the cab and the bed. Let me switch to a different pointer here so it's easier to see. There we go. There's a big gap between the cab and the bed. There's the mold detail for the door seams, all of which the decal has to cover. So what do you do in a case like that? Because obviously you can't lay the whole decal on there because you'll have this piece hanging. And well, first step, and I should have taken some pictures while I was doing it because it might have made it a little bit easier to see, but this was the original decal sheet. That's where the decal sat. So I cut it out in one big piece. But then what I did, I laid it up still on the decal sheet, you know, not immersed in water or anything. Laid it up against the side of the truck. I sighted how it would sit along this body seam where this big gap is, and I just made a little mark with a pen. I then set the decal on my hobby mat here so that I had one edge of the decal against the vertical line, and then I could sight my little pen mark against another vertical line to be sure I had a nice square cut. And I basically cut the decal in two. So now I had the section for the rear on the bed and the section for the front on the cab. Okay, and then into the water they went, and onto the model they go. Now, as a general rule for doing decals, this stuff is your bestest friend in the whole wide world. Is this Tamiya Mark Fit. What this allows is for the decal to settle into all of the detail on the kit. So rather than, let's say this is the detail, rather than the decal just sitting on top flush, the Mark Fit allows the decal to bend and settle in so that as the decal dries, it follows the contour line of the body that you're trying to cover. And when you look through here, you can see the grooves of the body side cladding that was molded into the body, and the decal is set right in there. Same back here. That was with 3 applications of the Mark Fit. So what this allows you to do, in the first step, you know, you sized up the decal. Second step, in this case, you had to cut it so that you can get the piece for the one side of the body seam, one for the other. Always when you apply your decals, just brush some Mark Fit on the surface of the plastic first. This will allow you to move the decal a little bit, make sure you get it positioned correctly. Put the decal on, let it sit. At that point, you'll be good on the body seam, but you will have the gaps for, in this case, the fuel filler door and the driver's door. So what do you do with them? Well, it may be easier to explain this with a little diagram. So we're going to imagine now, if this is looking at the body flush, imagine its side and cross section. So if you look at the body molding in cross section, what you will see is this. So this is the side of the car, side of the cab in this case, and this little U-shaped trough there is the molding for the door gap, okay? Obviously blown up in scale. When you lay the decal on top, the decal being one sheet is now going to sit and bridge over that gap. So what I do, I let the decal sit there. I let it dry for a few minutes. At that point, it won't be skittish. It won't move around. I then take, where did I put it? All right. So I then take my hobby knife, making sure I have a real sharp blade on there. I was looking for, there it is. It blended in. So what I do is I keep one, this blade I only use for cutting decals. So I know that's always super sharp. And what you do is you can run the blade right down that seam, right down that door gap. And it's your guide with the knife. And what that's going to do now is you are going to create a cut line in the decal. So now the decal is going to sit, and there's just going to be this tiny gap that you made with the knife. But the real trick then is you bomb it with the mark fit, and when the mark fit sits on top of the decal, it's going to cause the decal to curl down and settle into the valley of the seam molding. So after the mark fit, the decal will curl around and sit into that channel. So this is when you first put it on. We came in with the knife, we made the little slit. Now the decal's on there. We have the little gap that we made by cutting with the knife. That's not really the key. The key is hitting it with the mark fit, and then having those loose flaps there will curl around onto either side into the trough. Now, what will happen is once those curl around, you will be able to see the trough of the door seam. If you think about the way your vision works, your eye, your brain, how your brain interprets things, you only need a tiny line for your eye and your awareness to register that there is a gap there. So taking this fuel filler door, for example, let's get a closer look at that. This fuel filler door, that black or dark circle around the round door, that's strictly shadow that was created from the gray prime and then the red paint over it, and there was the shadow left of the primer in that trough. When the decal was on a little tacky, I took my super duper sharp blade and I just gently followed around the fuel filler door, which then created the cut through the white L and O of the cola. And you can see it's just that little bit of the O that we needed to stay on the fuel filler door. This is all backing for the decal, so it's not like the letters, there's a gap in decal. This is all one big sheet of decal. Then when I put the mark fit on it, those edges curled into the seam molded for the fuel filler door, and boom, the shadow of the primer that was there originally now becomes visible again. Now I'm using this truck as an example because it's really easy to see, hopefully really easy to see on camera, because it's a white decal against the black shadow and the red, so there's a lot of contrast there. But here as well, you can see it on the door seam, and on the flip side, same deal. Okay, now to show you how this looks with something of a slightly different color, the Golden Commandos kit. You may have remembered when I did this build. All right, this is a similar situation. This Golden Commandos, this is one long decal, but it went over the door seam. So to bridge the door seam, I had done the door seam with a fine black marker so that it looked like a door, you know, and not just a smooth slab along the side of the car. And when I put the decal on, same thing, I let it set a little bit. I went in with my knife, zip, zip, and then hit it with the mark fit, and it settled in there. And that was taken care of. And to give you another example, you may remember this guy. This was the first build video I ever put up on the channel. Not my best work, the video. Happy with the model. But anyway, here as well. Now, these decals came, this was already a separate decal for the tail of the bed. This was its own decal. But then this piece was all one decal. And I had to go over the door seams with this decal, and then up front with this decal again. And same thing, I put it on there, I let it sit and dry for a few minutes, just enough where I could come in with the knife and slice it without having the decal float around. The reason I don't wait fully for the decal to dry is just a matter of time savings, so that while the decal is still wet and the surface of the plastic still has some moisture on it, I can come in with the mark fit right away, and that will help do the magic and curl around those edges into the trough. And when that's done, you know, you'll have this effect rather than worrying about, you know, a less scale or less sightly, you know, run of a decal across door seams and whatnot. So it's a simple technique, but it's just something, you know, to keep in mind, that there are just these few steps, but that you have to start planning this before you actually start putting the decals on the car. So you know where you need to make your cuts. If you need to cut the decal entirely, like in this case, to bridge a big body gap, you know, this way you can plan this stuff up ahead of time, have it sighted out, then work with actually mounting the decal on the car. So there you go. Couple of easy steps. Slide up the decal, mark fit, decal goes on, make your cuts where you need to, mark fit again, and the decal will settle into the seams. If the first time you use the mark fit, it doesn't really look like a clean edge, use the mark fit again. There are some cases on some of the builds I've done where I've gone for, you know, multiple applications of this to get the decal to really settle in. The Nissan pickup, I'll bring that guy back out. This one, to get this to settle in here, I think I had to do 4 applications. These are nice decals, but they were pretty thick. They were pretty meaty to them, so they did not want to bend right away with the mark fit solution. So I let it dry and just went at it again, and you know, it just settles in. So there you go. Hope you find this handy. As usual, thanks for watching, and you know, happy to share the tip. If you find it useful for your own builds, please do, you know, as I always say, the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, hopefully it will help you out and maybe somebody else as well. Okay, so that's that. Now, I'm going to go crush some cars. Okay, so that's all. All right, thank you. Yeah, bye.